Hello and welcome our beloved viewers to RTD's News English Edition. As usual, we begin tonight's news with the major and top highlights. Let's follow. Opening of the International Summit on Climate Change and Research in Djibouti plus Kempinski. And on the international scene, a fire burns the slopes of Kilimanjaro Mountain in Tanzania. Those were our major top highlights. Welcome back to our newsroom, our beloved viewers. Under the leadership of the President of the Republic, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, Djibouti hosted today the International Summit of the Research on Climate Change. This event of regional and international scope saw the participation of the Somali President Mr. Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, Mr. Tahir Al-Hijri, Member of the Office of Sovereignty of Sudan, renowned Monsieur President of the Regional Council of the Province of Coast of Azor, representatives of Comoros, Turkey, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Uganda, South Sudan, and Ethiopia, of several international institutions, and representatives of civil society. This summit will serve as a high place of presentation of energies and alternatives, the consequences of climate change, and advocates for poor countries that suffer from the effects of climate change. Droughts, floods, habitat destruction, food insecurity, health problems, immigration, and even conflicts increase the vulnerability of the most fragile populations. Let's listen now to the President of the Coast of Azor Regional Council.
C'est un plaisir immense pour moi d'être de retour dans ce pays très voisin de la France.
It is a great pleasure for me to be back in this country very close to France, for which I have a special affection for, having come here many times. Djibouti is a beautiful country. The launch of the observatory is not only an indispensable tool in which we mobilize with you at your side, but also a vector of union for East Africa. As your respective presidents testify, the fight against climate change does not divide. It is not disputed. It brings us together, this fight against climate change in 2023. We have been designated by the European Commission as one of the pioneer regions of Europe in terms of adaptation to climate change. And we voted 3 days ago the budget for next year, which is dedicated 100% to climate. All investments of the region for the benefit of the inhabitants of the region of these 5 million inhabitants will systematically have environmental criteria that will structurally change the image. The need, despite the sensitive situations in the various neighboring areas, the fight against global warming is a fight that brings us together. The Climate Observatory will serve all the countries of East Africa, but well beyond, of course, Rwanda, Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia, Comoros, Uganda, and will coordinate and structure the data and action of these territories. Now to a member of Sudan's Sovereignty Council.
موضوع القمة التي نحن بصددها اليوم.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here in this global event, which is a global issue. You know very well that the consequences of climate change on the region, and in particular on my country, have a devastating effect. The last droughts and floods have caused the death of several people. We are now in the need to create national, regional, and international platforms to discuss measures and relevant solutions to reduce the effects that contribute to climate change. We are facing a real challenge that is costing hundreds of people their lives in floods, while the rest of the population in poor countries is suffering from drought. And efforts can only be made through cooperation between scientists and policymakers to put in place the necessary means through data, figures, and information to facilitate the prevention of bad weather and create a synergy between scientists and policymakers. The Ministry of Higher Education also made a speech. Let's listen. Trade areas at the crossroads of history. We wanted to be at the crossroads of science and research also. That is why in 2015, the President of the Republic, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, deemed it necessary in his speech to create this observatory so that the region can allow all researchers to work in a network, to optimize our means, not to wait for it to come from outside. And this is what we have done. Updating the database of our scientific knowledge today, young Africans from the Horn of Africa are working together to propose climate models, and we have young researchers that we can work together on our research schemes and on the adaptation scheme, propose sectoral recommendations for climate change in this context of global warming that affects us. And Djibouti is a great laboratory because on a small territory you have the sea, 375 kilometers of coastline, but you also have the mountains, and you also have arid and semi-arid lands. The President of the Federal Republic of Somalia also on this occasion made a speech.
Your Excellency, President Ismail Omar Guelleh, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and privilege to attend the opening ceremony of this regional research center on the environment and the climate. On behalf of the government and the people of Somalia, I wish to congratulate the government of the Republic of Djibouti and its people for hosting this summit, the path to sustainable adaptation and resilience. We are in the midst of one of the worst drought situations following the failure of 4 consecutive rainy seasons due to the impact of the climate change. Scientific research has shown that the human behavior has exponentially contributed to the current state of our environment. The severe weather patterns, droughts, the greenhouse gases, emissions are all the consequences of human behavior since the Industrial Revolution. Climate change impacts are dire and require drastic action from regional policy and decision makers to change this trend. The tremendous changes that the Horn of Africa region has experienced in recent years demonstrate the power of commitment to move the countries forward, a commitment by the Djibouti leaders under the leadership of His Excellency Ismail Omar Guelleh to meet their people's aspiration for a better future, and a better future begins with the developing and protecting our environment for the future generations to come. We are in the midst of one of the worst droughts in this region. Millions of people in this region are affected by the food insecurity, and humanitarian agencies are struggling to cope with the ever-growing demand against dwindling support for the development partners. Livestock is the source of livelihood for pastoralists, which is the most of the population in this region, and contributes to the government revenues as well, and provides employment to a wide range of professionals and other service providers. The pastoral-based livestock subsector secures direct job opportunities for over 55% of the total labor force, plus indirect employment for another significant segment of the labor force along the livestock value chains. Against this backdrop, one of the first actions I took upon my re-election in mid-May this year was to create the first federal Ministry of Environment in the history of Environment and Climate Change in the history of Somalia.
His Excellency, the President of the Republic, Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, made a speech where he emphasized the importance of climate change. Let's listen to His Excellency.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
الحمد لله الصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
First of all, I would like to thank all those present here who have responded to our invitation. I would like to welcome the presence of the Somali President, Mr. Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, the President of the Paka region, Renaud Monsieur, the ministers representing the presidents who could not attend, the researchers, the representatives of civil society, and the students. Ladies and gentlemen, global warming is undoubtedly the most important threat facing humanity. It is now a major fact that we can no longer ignore and whose magnitude has accelerated in recent years. The indicators are clearly in the red and no country is safe. It is confirmed that the use of fossil fuels is the main cause. Although we are a low emitter of greenhouse gases, we are unfortunately suffering the heavy consequences. Droughts, floods, habitat destruction, food insecurity, health problems, migrations, and even conflicts increase the vulnerability of the most fragile populations, especially in the poorest countries. Although Africa contributes relatively little to global warming, more than 180 million people in the sub-Saharan Africa could die from climate change by the end of the century. Currently, and closer to home, the situation in the Horn of Africa is alarming, as the survival of 10 million people is threatened by drought. It should be recalled that in Djibouti, the periods of drought from 2018 to 2011 caused a loss of $177 million, or 3.9% of GDP, and affected 120,000 people, or 15% of the population. Economically speaking, natural disasters already affect more than 35.5% of our economy. We are continuing our efforts to assist the vulnerable population by ensuring their food and health security, as well as their well-being. We have already taken our responsibilities in terms of greenhouse gas mitigation by committing to our 2035 vision for electric power generation based entirely on renewable energy. To confirm this commitment to reduce, the Republic of Djibouti has built, in partnership with Ethiopia, an interconnection line to harness clean hydropower from dams since 2011. Let's listen now to the second part of the speech of the President of the Republic. Through the new reforms of the energy production sector, Djibouti has undertaken programs based on public-private partnership. For example, a new 60 MW wind power plant installed in Goubet will be connected to the national grid before the end of the year thanks to the new EDD substation built in Goubet. In addition, solar energy will soon see a new solar power plant with a capacity of 30 megawatts that will reinforce the national electricity network with renewable energy. Finally, the country has launched several geothermal exploration programs that represent a significant potential that should fully contribute to the transition to renewable energy. We wanted to go even further by putting research and scientific knowledge at the heart of the climate issue. The objective is to fill the gaps in climate data, to have a scientific platform open to the region and internationally to better guide our mitigation and adaptation policies. In this context, we proceeded this morning to the integration of the Regional Research Observatory for the Environment and Climate, an observatory now operational with quality equipment with technical and scientific staff up to the challenge. I would like to congratulate the Ministry of Higher Education and Research and the CERD for having kept our commitments and for the work done. The holding of the Climate Change and Research, the Road to Sustainable Adaptation and Resilience Summit is closely linked to this observatory. We are very pleased to have among us policymakers, scientists, experts, technicians, private sector personalities, donors, civil society, and youth to share their experience and help us better optimize ORC's work for the region and the climate. On the eve of COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, a COP that targets the need for a just transition, Djibouti is more determined than ever to take its responsibilities. We will continue to advocate for those who suffer, to raise awareness of the dangers that threaten us, to defend our convictions on the need for more solidarity through the financing of losses and damage related to global warming. We will continue to advocate for more cooperation and efficiency in the face of global warming and its consequences on the world. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, I declare the summit, Climate Change and Research, the Path to Sustainable Adaptation and Resilience, open. And thank you for your attention. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, proceeded this day to the inauguration of the Regional Observatory Center on Environment and Climate Research. Upon his arrival at the Observatory Center, the President of the Republic, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, was welcomed by the Prime Minister, Mr. Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed, and the Minister of Higher Education and Research, Dr. Nabil Mohammed Ahmed. The Regional Observatory of Research will play a significant role in creating a regional platform of data on scientific research on the environment and climate, but also formulate relevant strategies and produce new knowledge to cope with the consequences of climate change.
Martikas kudan sili
President of the Republic, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Omar Guelleh, and his Somali counterpart, Mr. Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, as well as Mr. Tahir Al-Hijr, member of the board of the Sovereignty Council in Sudan, and several guests proceeded to the cutting of the ribbon, which marks the inauguration of the Regional Observatory Center of the Environment and Climate Research. The center constitutes a regional laboratory of facilitators for the young scientific specialists trained to make researches from the required data at the national and regional scale on the climate and the environment to prevent the consequences of the climate change, namely droughts, storms, and floods. The President of the Republic and his Somali counterpart, Mr. Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, visited the premises of the Regional Observatory of Environment and Climate, which is equipped with modern materials in terms of research, but also powerful software to collect data and make research to solve the problems related to climate change.
Jariya burfanatay jabuti awade jirab kasta umudatay way qof jiraysan mooye shacbigu jeel hoo qiray jaranjarooyin adag iyo intaad jira soo dhaaftay eed meela qayrka ku jabay adigu soo jiidhay way runta lagama jeeste intaad jariya burfanatay jabuti awadeed jirab kasta u mudatay way qof jiraysan mooye shacbigu jeel hoo qilaye jawilagu tisqaadiyo wax qabaad dunida soo jiitay ka jawaabka baahida jirtiyo waxay bulshadu jiidan jirida u yagleel horumar jiil dambi u aayo mashaariicda kala jaadka qodobka laga jarayo jihaad baad ku keento raxmaan kuguma hoojiye intaad hawl u soo jilib dhigtaa jaallow loog yahaye daliilka abaalmari dantaad.
Let's now listen to the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Nabil. Know the earth is getting warmer. This creates problems of flooding, drought, food insecurity, and conflicts in the countries of the region. Thanks to the vision of the President of the Republic, who in 2015 wished that there will be a research observatory, but that it would be regional, open to the whole region, to all scientists in the region, but also to the international, so that thanks to this vision, we are able to create this regional observatory for the environment and climate, which has exceptional tools in the region. And we would really like to have variable data so that we can advise policies, find solutions toward drought and flood problem, and have adaptation and resilience of our citizens and the whole population of East Africa. Finally, I would say that the most important thing for us is that Djibouti is at the crossroads of trade, exchange, and meetings. The General Director of the Observatory also indicated a few points. We're fortunate in the Republic of Djibouti to have benefited from an institution of scientific research after independence, and the structure has developed over time. It expanded with the assumption of the Center for Studies and Research of Djibouti and the young Djiboutian scientists who have been trained, who have made it possible to conduct multidisciplinary scientific research activities during these past decades. Have allowed it even with these discoveries, and especially with our era that knows more and more impacts of climate change, disastrous events, and is moreover at the International Panel on Climate Studies. The IPCC announces very clearly that in our region of West Africa, the events are going to accelerate, and we can see today through the news that we live from day to day, not only here but around the world, that the catastrophic events and indeed unfortunately impact very negatively on human populations, on our environment, and that is why the Ministry of Higher Education and Research with Dr. Nabir at the head has taken this initiative for several years now to allow the region to have a platform that allows scientists to consult and work together in order to better understand what is happening in our environment. The Djiboutian Army organized this Sunday, October 23rd, a large-scale joint exercise in the region of Coron. The demonstration of actions by fire and movement was scaffolded by the Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, who went to the observatory of the maneuver area of Coron at first light. At his side, the Chief of Defense Staff and the major officials of the Djiboutian Army all came to this demonstration to appreciate the operational capacity of the means and the military personnel engaged on this exercise. On the theoretical level, the order of battle was prepared and presented by the Chief of Corps of the Armored Regiment, Colonel Dahir Hassan Abadid. In this order was an improvised enemy situation that foresaw the evaluation of Djiboutian territory by a third force. The mission of the Djiboutian Army was to retaliate as quickly as possible to stop the enemy advance before neutralizing it. Let's watch. The exercise, which consisted of preparing the Djibouti Armed Forces to conduct low and high-intensity defense operations on national soil, took place in three major phases: design, development, and execution. In addition, the execution of this exercise resulted in total satisfaction of the ADF High Command in view of the accuracy and effectiveness of the shots on targets achieved by the simultaneous ground and air attacks. The Air Force, by means of rocket fire from their Z-9 helicopters, disrupted enemy communications. Ground-to-ground military destroyed enemy logistics. Armor and infantry successfully proceeded to suppress the enemy. These fictitious objectives were represented on the ground by drone targets and vehicle carcasses. The soldiers deployed for this exercise were confronted with two non-complement cases, of which one was the discovery of an improvised explosive device that they had to neutralize using their theoretical knowledge and military tools. The second time simulated the injury of a soldier during the mission. A medical evacuation by helicopter was organized to evacuate the person. Finally, this military exercise will have been beneficial for the Djiboutian Army, which is constantly training to increase its strike force and its defense system in systematical or asymmetrical style conflicts. The Chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Zakaria Sheikh Ibrahim, congratulated the organizers of this scenario and its executors for the excellent result obtained. Our duty to our country is to be ready to defend our sovereignty, our security, and our national interests. That's why we will continue to strengthen our armed forces to equip them with weapons and equipment. The SEMGA added before leaving the observatory, this making the end of the military maneuver. Let us all watch.
odayada
Shifting gears towards the international scene now, a major fire broke out in Tanzania on the slopes of Kilimanjaro at 4,000 meters altitude. More in this report.
Mountain Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, the highest peak in Africa, officially confirmed Saturday. William Wakilma, Tanzania National Parks Conservation Commissioner Tanaba, said the fire broke out on part of the mountain, said a statement signed by Catherine Pena, Tanabe's conservation officer in charge of communication. In October 2020, a fire broke out on the mountain and destroyed 95.5 square kilometers of vegetation and 12 feet to toilet and solar equipment used by tourists climbing the mountain.
That is our blog viewers. We finally conclude this edition. Thank you for being with us and make sure to tune in later for more. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you once again. Take care.